Hey everyone, and welcome to the Innov8 event. We have a great panel today talking about hiring globally in different locations. We have a great panel with us, and they'll introduce themselves in a second. My name is Assaf Schwartz. I'm the head of talent in AppsFlyer, which is a SaaS tech company based in Israel with 20 locations worldwide. I'll be moderating this panel. And just a quick introduction. So Yotam, do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks, Assaf. Good evening, good morning to all the amazing participants in the panel, probably, and also to the panelists with me. My name is Yotam Tzuker. I'm leading the business development at CQ Global. We are a global consultative search firm located in Israel. What we do, we basically help mostly Israeli startups, companies, help find and locate great talents across the globe outside of Israel. So we basically need to translate the Israeli DNA, the Israeli culture, the Israeli companies, the Israeli attitude, and translate it and help clients globally find, locate, and understand how to find the best talent to fit their company.
Okay, great. Translating Israeli culture outside is challenging. We're special. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon as well. My name is Karen Manantan, and I'm an HR specialist at Globalization Partners, where I provide key support in the Middle East and as well as in African region, and I am based in Dubai. So Globalization Partners, basically, we break barriers for businesses to expand globally.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Ariel?
Sure. So guys, hello, and it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be part of this panel. Thanks for having me. My name is Ariel, and I lead the business for Infinipoint. In a nutshell, Infinipoint is a device identity as a service. In essence, it's think Okta for your devices. Everything Okta does for identity, we do for devices. It's a fully SaaS platform. It's part of the zero trust conversation today. So obviously a hot market and someone we're seeing a lot of success in. And I always come in early on. I come in early on the businesses, multiple startups, and I'm challenged with building out the business, the ecosystem, the go-to-market, the product market fit. And yes, also hiring extensively, which is obviously a big challenge. And it's part of what we're going to have the conversation today. And I'll try and share from a hiring perspective, from a managing perspective, what I look at when I want to hire successfully and who I work with. So that's going to be part of it.
Awesome. So we have like a very nice mix of kind of all the aspects that are involving with opening up global offices. We have kind of more of the partner side, whether kind of the integrators and companies that help us kind of establish a local identity like Globalization Partners. And we have Yotam that really, and CQ Global that help kind of hiring and finding the right people. And then we have Ariel kind of more from the client side and kind of the hiring manager side and that. So it's good that everyone will kind of bring their own kind of flavor to the panel. So we'll learn from that. The first question that I want to ask you guys is about, okay, so the CEO or someone very senior goes to kind of the VP of HR or the head of talent says, okay, we want to open another office in X. And then usually what are the things, the 2-3 most important things that an HR representative that is tasked with opening a new location needs to know in advance in order to have that as smooth, as fast, as successful as possible? Karen, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Assad. So if you're hiring a remote candidate within the borders of your country of origin, that's a simple task. However, adding an international team member and creating a truly global team has unique challenges as well. So the top 2 most important things to remember are first, legal, tax, and compliance challenges. So to hire compliantly in any country, you must follow the proper legal procedures in country before onboarding your candidate. So first, it's essential to set up a legal entity So this will allow your business to pay appropriate tax, file payroll, and remain compliant throughout the employment relationship. The only problem with entity setup is that these laws and regulations vary from country to country. So it puts a major burden on the business to discover the unknown and ensure compliance. For example, in US, employment laws favor the employer over the employee. So it is majority of the United States, employment is typically on at-will basis. So at-will means that an employee is free to quit or leave their job at any time for any reason. So it also means that an employer is free to, terminate an employee for any reason at any time. So the second one is business presence in the country you wish to hire. So if your organization elects to set up its own legal entity in the country you wish to hire, it's really important to know what to expect. It's not usually as simple as sending paperwork, right? So some countries require in-person bank account setup and capitalization requirements, which could take months to process. For example, Monday.com wanted to onboard candidates in Brazil and Canada. However, they did not have their business presence in both countries yet. So instead of investing the resources to set up an entity in the country with low headcount, Monday.com team identified an opportunity to use an employer of record to onboard their international hires, conserving costs and accelerating the timeline.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about basically on kind of the legal aspects or kind of the administrative aspects that it's very important to check them before you go full on and open positions or post positions or hire agencies, and understanding that. Amazing. So that's definitely a good basis. Ariel, what are your thoughts around kind of from the client side, things that are important to take into account?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think I'd spin it even to the initial conversation about who do we partner up with in order to do this. Usually what happens at this point is you're hiring out of the family for the first time. And then there is a big risk around being strategic functions that have a big impact on the business, but you have less of an impact on the hiring. And you really need a partner to help you do that successfully because there's so much risk entailed. And I think a few, maybe 2-3 things that are key for me on part of that partnership journey that we do with whoever we team up with is first to have a really good understanding from the partner side, what's our business about? Sort of really understand our business in order to really go for the fit, because it's all about fit. And if you don't understand our business, it becomes generic and that sort of floats out really fast. The other one is actually ask, what does success look like a year down the road for this hire? And then you could work yourself backwards into what are you looking to hire? You need a really good understanding of the set of goals, both immediate and short and midterm at least, to get a good success fit. And the last one is calibration. Fast calibrations actually optimize the process. So get a good, 1-2 runs, understand what you're looking for, and then you could really flush it out.
Right. And when you're talking about who to partner with, you're talking about what kind of entities that you recommend people to kind of, check out.
Exactly. So I would say, specific agencies, headhunters, things, exactly the conversations we're having now, this is a big bet, so-called. You have to do this with professional people or else the risk is just too much. And the idea is to really find a good fit. It's a partnership. You're usually going to do it with the same agency again and again if it was successful. So invest the time initially to build that partnership and understand.
Right. Definitely don't dive into the water alone. Ask for help from people who've been there before and done that. Definitely. Yotam, what do you think from kind of your perspective?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Let's cover the entity issue, since we had a client a few months ago that tried to recruit in Japan, which is not very often. Not many companies are hiring there, but they didn't have an entity, a proper entity in Japan, and then they didn't have the opportunity. They didn't have we helped them find relevant candidates, and no one has agreed to move and work for this company. So sometimes you really understand what are the culture that in the country that you are opening the entity. So speaking about culture, I think understanding the differences of culture in the country that you are going to work with. In general, companies are looking mainly on the US, but there are other new territories that you probably will operate it. We are working in Germany, UK, Japan, Singapore, and you need to understand the differences of culture. For example, speaking about title. So in Israel, whoever listening and is from Israel, you know that he or she know that we care less about titles in Israel. I'm not saying that it's not important. It's not the main issue. But when you're going to countries like in the Far East, or maybe in Germany, or also in the US, you need to really take into consideration what are the titles that you are giving and how do your job description look like. So this is something that sometimes we do copy paste, or we might not take this in very professionally, since we are used to do it in our own country. We kind of understand how we bring talent, but this is a big issue when speaking about understanding the culture. The second thing that is also related to the entity, but it's more understanding the compensation and benefits. So we are part of lots of HR forum in Israel, and I think the main issue of understanding, it's also related to hiring manager like Ariel, and I think everyone who is working in other countries, understanding the compensation and benefits very well, work with professional, if you want to work with locals or work with other partners, because there's lots of money that lie there, and sometimes you can convince great talents to join your team just by understanding the benefits. Taking the US, for example, so people in the US really take into consideration the medical insurance, and they might join or not join to your company if you don't have the proper medical insurance and you want coverage, all their family sometimes. So it's really something that you need to understand. You need to deep dive, make the mathematics, and understand where you need to, if you need to have more base salary, or either more pension, or either more other type of insurance, because there are a lot of money that lies there.
Right. Okay, awesome. And that's actually a good segue to kind of the other topic that I wanted to talk about. So, and if summarizing kind of this section, it's basically, I would say in one sentence, do your homework. Do your homework right about, who to partner with, what are the kind of the legal aspects, what are the cultural differences, and that homework beforehand will save you probably a lot of time, effort, money, frustration. Been there, done that, by the way, obviously made every mistake. So definitely do that prep. But that leads me, Yotam, to talking about, after kind of the prep, what's kind of actually the hiring strategy. And since our audience is mainly from Israel, I would like to hear about what you started to talk about, Yotam, about countries that the culture or the way of hiring, or even the way that we post the positions, maybe LinkedIn is not really, predominant in certain countries. So what are the tips or kind of interesting things that you can tell the audience about different countries that are very different from Israel, or let's say, your typical kind of Western high-techy environment? Ariel, do you want to start maybe from your past, kind of things that surprised you?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I just want to answer, talk to Yotam's point about Japan. Japan's a good example of 100% localization. You can't do anything there. They talk, it's all backwards. It's different language. You really have to come in and respect the culture. I think Yotam was going to respect the culture because they feel it very fast. And if you respect it, good things start. And you sort of have to do your homework, exactly to your point. I think back to your question. Yeah, I mean, different. It's not a one size fits all, like you said. My 2 cents, the way I go into these things is, how fast do I create trust, right? How fast does somebody that I am speaking to actually feel comfortable with what it is I am saying, and actually starts being affected by the sales motion? Because everything is a sales motion. We're selling the job to the point where we're creating appetite, and then, it sort of goes on his head and people want to start coming in, because most of the people you're talking to are not looking for jobs. They're happy in their own job. and you sort of reached out to them. So therefore, the first thing I do is sort of understand in that geo, what does a sales motion look like? How do we build our story? It's related to reality, but actually the story together with the partner in a way that is not too salesy, but actually creates a really nice appetite that could go into, and everywhere differs. Everywhere differs. Yotam was talking about healthcare, things like that. Those are benchmarks, but they're not the ones you lead with. You lead with the storyline, why it's interesting, why the people are interesting, why the technology is interesting, why the market is interesting in their specific locations, not in the world, not in the US. Talk about Germany when you're talking about Germany. I'm partnering up with a German partner to go to market. Talk about wherever you are, localize that conversations on the sales motion. And that's where you get the most impact. That's what I would say.
By the way, I want to add something to Ariel. Since in Israel, in the last 5 years, the employer branding become like a trend, but no one really speak about employer branding out of your country. And think about it, that even, okay, you are working for AppsFlyer, probably one of the most, of the biggest companies in Israel in terms of in the startup ecosystem. And then you probably, when you are going to a new territory, Germany, you're going to the UK, you're going to France. No, I won't say nobody, but most of the people you will speak with don't know who is AppsFlyer, don't know Assaf, don't know your team. And understanding that employer branding is different from country to country, this is a huge gap that HR need to bridge. And you need to work with the right people, and you need to you need to invest in the right places to understand that you have to build a new employer branding strategy for each territory.
Right. Employer branding is super important, and we Israelis have a tendency to kind of centralize around, our country and our challenges and hiring engineers. But definitely it's a struggle. By the way, a great KPI to measure kind of your effectiveness in your employer branding is amount of CVs that pass the application review. Okay, per job usually. Okay, so just amount of CVs is not a good metric enough. For example, in India, you'll get a lot of CVs, but a lot of them won't be exactly a good fit. But valid CVs is a kind of a good KPI. And you'll definitely, Yotam, as you said, you'll see a difference between this amount in Israel, where we have strong presence, and other countries that maybe we have less. Karen, back to my question of like, what are the things that are a bit different from, that might be a bit different from your home turf? So I will say, which countries would you say have like really maybe unique or particular kind of, I don't know, anything about kind of legal compliance, talent pool that people should be aware of when they go and start to hire there?
Okay, let me take you guys to the US, for instance. Okay, so when it comes to business laws, as you know, the United States is notably different from other countries. So labor and tax laws are a mixture of, federal rules and regulations and state laws, and the requirements of hiring a person who lives, for example, in Pennsylvania can be notably different from the requirements of hiring an individual who lives in California, for instance. So as discussed before, in the majority of the US, employment is typically at will basis. So which means that when your employment contract is at will basis, you can actually free to quit or resign in the same as the employer can easily, terminate your contract. So according to the Affordable Care Act, or ACA, in the US, employers having 50 or more full-time employees must offer insurance that must meet the ACA's specification or pay a fine. So the rules and expectations for health insurance vary based on the size of the employer. So as I've mentioned, companies that employ more than 50 people are expected to follow different rules compared to those companies, who are hiring less than 50 people.
Right. Okay. So you're saying, for example, in the US, they need to have a very good kind of legal understanding of kind of the rights of the employees and the workforce in order to basically not make mistakes or not be compliant with the rules, and the rules are changing between states, specifically in the US, right?
Yes. You're
I
correct.
want to speak, Assaf, about Germany, if I may add, since it becomes a very important country in terms of startups and Israeli startups and companies that try to set their entity or set their presence in Europe. I'm not getting into politics and Brexit and why did it happen, but it becomes like a huge deal of Israeli companies to move to Germany in the last, I would say, 5 years. We recently worked with more than 30 companies over there in Germany. And taking Israel and Germany, comparing like the culture and comparing the labor laws between the countries. In Israel, we like to work in startup. We like to be in small companies. We like to be in an innovative environment. And when you are going to Germany, where there are more traditional people, they like to work for bigger companies. They like to work for very common companies. And for them, it's very hard to do the moves. In Israel, it's very common to move from company to companies every year, every other year or something like this. And to convince a German talent to move to a new entity, a new company, and let's speak about a startup like Infinipoint, for example, that they don't know them. They still might be working for invoices. And the process there, they used to work for very bureaucratic kind of environment. And they're working their compliancy with the GDPR. It's a huge challenge for an Israeli company to convince the right talent to join them in Germany, and when you understand it and you are coming prepared to work in Germany, for instance, and you do your homework, you probably will winning easily there.
Okay. So, and then you would say, and maybe Ariel, if you have like experience hiring in Germany.
Yep.
So yep. What would you say eventually is kind of, because of the cultural differences, what should people be aware of when they're hiring?
No, it's a great point. Actually, Germany is a good example, just like France and Dutch and Netherlands. There are a few of those where the social benefits are very excessive. And usually when you hire, you're going into a marriage, which is not the case in the US, where you could cut it really, really fast if it doesn't work out. And actually what we did with Germany, we have a strategic partner in Germany that's covering primarily Europe, but it's covering primarily Germany and Europe. And what we did with this partner, there's a big trust. We're going to market together. And actually that partner helped us create what we're calling the brand and helped us identify locally who he feels is the best person to work with them, because they're going to be working together, but also to work with us. So we sort of shortcutted it with a very strategic partner. That's one thing. The other one is, everybody has his own ecosystem. I have ex-Palo Alto Networks for many years, was part of an acquisition. And therefore your networks becomes very, very relevant because these are the people that already were moved. They got out of the German traditional and they're now rotating in startups. So I know these people. I know people who know these people and could actually start knowing that smaller pool, which is more agile, more relevant, understands the flexibility that needs to be done with early startups. And as a result, what I usually do there is, and I've done this before, is actually start with some of these people, which I know, or they know people I know, as a trial run as consultants. So there's limited investment and obligations as a consultant. We run for whatever it is, a quarter, 2 quarters based on KPIs. And if it all works out, we roll into something a little more, aggressive. But if it doesn't work out, then we checked it out. We don't have all the compliances that have to go with, a full FTE. And it worked out actually really well. So your partnership, helping us identify people from, networking. So they're already out there in that ecosystem and actually starting out with something a little more soft, something like a consultant, and then rolling into an FTE.
Right. And then I want to talk about Yotam, you mentioned earlier kind of job descriptions and things that are different. And I think our audience would be interested in that. Like, should I change my job descriptions or do things differently? So let's talk about job descriptions. Let's talk about where do we market. Maybe in some countries, LinkedIn, which we usually, we usually use to post jobs, is maybe not the most powerful tool in certain countries. So I'm not addressing anyone specific, whoever wants to kind of chime in and just talk about like specific countries that the culture dictates a different hiring strategy, to the point of changing the way the job descriptions look like, to the point that the job boards should look differently, or maybe no one will respond job boards because it's not custom there. So who wants to kind of talk about, a specific location and kind of the differences that people should be aware of in the actual hiring, less about kind of the infrastructure that I think we kind of covered by now.
I can relate it to something that we spoke about, the cultural in the differences in hiring, and maybe I can be more specific. And let's take the US, okay, now for example. And there are some issues when you are in the hiring process, and you should take into consideration. For example, there are questions that you can ask and you cannot ask the applicants. And in the US, they consider it like protected class. So you cannot speak about age, race, color, sexual orientation, pregnant or not pregnant. You should take this into consideration, and there are questions that you cannot ask about their family, about their age, place of birth, the worker compensation history. And sometimes when you don't understand this as and somebody who is doing the interview, or maybe writing the job description, and you are coming from a different culture, from Israel, for instance, where you feel more flexible with the candidate. I'm not saying that it's just like our kind of culture kind of thing, and we kind of know you are from Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. It's not a huge difference like in other countries, and you need to take this into consideration when you are going to different market. Understand really specifically that you are not making any mistake that you will lose great talent and great candidates.
Right. So kind of talking about the do's and don'ts. And yeah, in my recommendation, if you don't have boots on the ground, like employees on the ground already that can obviously attest to kind of the culture of the hiring, ask either a colleague that works in that country that most of you will probably know, or just consult with an agency or a partner like Globalization Partners that they know very well what are kind of the do's and don'ts. And yeah, definitely there are countries that there are things that you are not just legally cannot ask or cannot say, which maybe in Israel, for example, you can. It's not going to be PC, but no one's going to sue you. But in some places, it could become a legal issue. So we should be careful and comply with the laws. Cool. I wanted, you know what, Ariel or Karen, anything else about the actual hiring and kind of tips to do things that should be done differently in other places, where to post jobs, what to write, anything around that you want to add?
I think that's a good point. So yeah, I also agree with you that we don't want to name agencies, right? Where you want to post your profiles when you are searching talents all over the world. But I would say that LinkedIn is yeah, you can name it. LinkedIn
Right.
is one of the top platforms at the moment to search good hires or good talent. Glassdoor also is there. So there are a lot of agencies out there, but it depends on your company policies on how you are going to use this use the profile of the professional when hiring.
Right. Okay, cool. I wanted to ask if you ever got creative or needed to get creative. Maybe, you know, you were looking for certain positions in certain locations and you just couldn't find or couldn't generate a good pipe, and you had to get creative and do some things that are not, let's say, traditional. If you have any examples of things you did in the past, or maybe things that you heard of or your partners or your clients did or you did for them. Do you have any kind of interesting examples around that? Ariel, did you ever start a startup mode? You had the kind of the privilege to do crazy things.
Yeah, and get away with it. Exactly. To our previous conversation. Yeah, we have some more flexibility. Yeah, I would say that, you know, the way, you know, I've done hiring for a while now, and it really is evolving. I mean, you see big companies now boasting on bulletin boards, things that, you know, for high tech, things you never think of in bus stops before. And I think it's all about brand awareness and actually, you know, to our point, creating that brand and something you want to be part of. I could say that we've done some, you know, like gamification things. You know, we let ourselves loose a little around, you know, if you want to save the world, this is where you should be looking at things around that area. We've done that. You know, I don't know that the conversion was a lot better, but we felt better about ourselves and we felt like we were doing something else. And I think that's also a vote of something. But yeah, you have the flexibility as a startup. You really have to think, how do you stand out? There's a lot of storytelling noise and storytelling war, and cutting through the noise is a big conversation. And you have to do that twice. A, to get somebody, and B, once you have the conversation with somebody. It's always a sales motion. How do you sort of pique the appetite to somebody or some, you know, girl or boy saying, I actually want to be part of this team. This is a team I want to see more. That's always what we're challenging ourselves. And then it also talks to who's the first person to take the call. Sometimes, you know, if you're hiring strategic positions, VPs and up, I'll take the first call because I want to be the salesperson, that I want to be the face of the company that they meet. And then I'll go through another process going down and then back up. But if they meet somebody that's not enthusiastic, not motivated, doesn't know how to tell our story really well, it's going to die on the vine. So that is also, you know, you factor that in, not only bringing them, but once you have that first touching point, how does that look? So you're always building appetites.
Right. Yotam, do you have any examples of like creative things that either you did or your clients did to kind of, as Ariel said, kind of stand out?
So it's not exactly like kind of stand out, but it was really creative in terms of hiring. So we had clients a few months ago in New York. We recruit them a sales director, and their policy was to pay insurance, medical insurance only for the employee. And he had a full coverage for his whole family. So he had a contract, and then he told us, no, I'm not going to sign. It's not something I want to do. I'm signing only if I have a full coverage for the family. So, but the policy of the company, you know, it's a big company. They won't change the policy. They won't change the policy for just one employee. So we asked, okay, what is the gap here? It was about $8,000. And then if you take it annually, okay, it's not a lot. It's a few $100s for a month, right? So what we did together with our clients, we just increased in a bit his base salary, which wasn't like a big issue, and it was easier for the HR. You really need to be agile and understand like the complexity. And they've increased the base salary, and then he signed up. We said to him, okay, you're gonna cover now your family with this amount of money because we won't change the policy of the company. And then he signed up, and he's still working there.
It's great. Money's always better than anything else. So.
Yeah, cash money.
Just give me the money, and I'll deal with it. Probably they didn't buy insurance. They just went and bought like a new TV or something.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I can tell you that something that I try to do is usually when companies are branching out to new territories, the first thing they do is they get business there. They don't get offices. And when they get business, they either participate in events or sponsor events, or they go and mingle, but most of the time they do business, right? They sell the product. What I try usually to tell people who travel around is that also start selling positions, okay? Because you're talking with people, get them interested, say, hey, we're opening an entity and give me a call or let's chat or whatever. So kind of taking advantage as recruiters of the people that you already have on the ground and are mingling and attending events, and always making sure that they keep in mind that, yes, they are selling the product, but they have another goal, which is kind of selling positions and making sure that we bring the most interesting and amazing people. And definitely as a recruiter, after people come back from events in places that you want to open an entity or enhance the entity, just sit with them for 15 minutes and debrief. Like, who did you meet? Who were like the most interesting people? Who were like the panelists who were speaking? Because usually speakers are, you know, they have, like us, they have more experience. So definitely that's something that, you know, in terms of like, you know, with zero budget, you kind of, you know, work agents and have them help you. I wanted to talk about specifically about agencies. Okay, so obviously a lot of times when we go in and we hire outside and we don't have, you know, local recruiters or strong brand awareness or any presence, we obviously need the help of agencies. So I would ask you guys, what are your tips? Okay, you don't have to name names aside from CQ Global, but what are your tips? Things to think about. Do I work with a local agency from my country that kind of outsources their solution outside and help you hire outside, or do I work with local agencies? And in general, how do I, you know, except from like Googling, you know, agencies in Berlin, and what's kind of the best way to kind of partner with the right agencies that will help you hire? Who wants to start? Yotam, I'll keep you to the end. Yotam.
You know, maybe I'll start because I'm the receiving end of this. So I'll tee it up for Yotam and Karen. Actually, I work with Yotam and we're very happy. I would say you know, track record is key. You usually don't want to do something with somebody that it's your first time that they're trying it out on you. It might be great, but it might not. So the risk, you know, is inherent there. And track record talks volumes. And then you start asking around, you know, network ecosystem, we've been around. Who was successful for you and why were they successful? And that goes a long way, by the way. And it usually stops there to a large extent. And then you get, you know, 2 or 3 leading ones and you have a short shopping, and then you decide which one has the good fit. On top of that, most of the startups, they have a VC ecosystem. VC has an extension to portfolio companies. Portfolio companies are doing more or less the same of what you're trying to do. And in the startup world, you know, sharing is caring, but not everyone wants to share everything. But with regards to hiring, actually, usually people do share, and they're very good about it because they don't feel like you're taking business off their table. So it's a good place to actually get some really solid track record and success stories. And the last one is actually to flip the side. Once you've picked, they need to pick you. It's always a reciprocal road. So Yotam needs to want to work with me. In order to do that, there's also a selling conversation that needs to happen. They need to understand that this is the most amazing company that today is in access security, Infinipoint, and want to be able to sell that and position it because they want to know that they'll be successful. So I would say there's also things to do there with regards to agility and how fast I answer Yotam and how do we work together and how do we build a storyline that they feel very comfortable with positioning the product.
Right. And in respects to kind of local agencies, you know, based in your country or agencies at the location that you want to hire, did you have experience working with both? In some cases it works better this way, in some cases this way?
I worked with both, and I am working with both, and it's really about the track record. There are agencies here that have done a great job in the US, superb, you know, and they know the whole Israeli / you know, US execs that work with Israeli startup pool. That is something I want to tap into. It really depends on what they've done. It's less geo, because a lot of people are global today, and it's really about what you've done and how successful you are. I don't put a lot of emphasis on the geo. I've been successful both here and both there, and it's down to the agency itself.
Right, understood. Karen, I guess you help a lot of clients kind of partner with the right agencies, or you kind of in the middle between everything. So you kind of know agencies well. So what would you say would be kind of the tips of for clients who partner with agencies?
Okay, so when looking into an agency or a local service provider in a certain country, you have to, you know, always check, or I know not most of the companies are doing a background check, But I would suggest that this is really important. You have to check this if there are any surveys. There are a lot of Google surveys out there. Maybe you can consider that as well. And you know, most importantly, we have to check a company who's a positive company culture. So in that way, we know that this company is totally focused on, you know, the employment engagement.
Right. So you're saying kind of doing more background check on the agencies that you're going to work with?
Yes,
yeah.
That is one thing to consider.
Right. Interesting. And any tips to how do I do a background check for an agency in a country that I don't really know? Like, what's usually kind of the procedure?
And there are actually a lot of procedures, and there are a lot of third-party agencies. I don't want to name one, but you know, one way to do is you want to survey the market itself and how good this particular local partner is doing, how many companies, you know, they are dealing with, how many professionals they have, what is their status in terms of you know, taxes or something like that.
Right. Okay, great. That's a great tip. Usually what I do basically with every product that I want to introduce to the company is I ask them who are their main partners and their main clients, and then I ask them permission if they can connect me with their clients, and then I ask them, how is this agency doing for you? You know, what's their capacity? Are they meeting your KPIs? And things like that. So definitely kind of, you know, understanding who to partner with is super important. Yotam.
I won't do it into sales pitching, but just I think that I will relate to what Ariel said. I think that at the end of the day, your partner will be your ambassador, so you need to really take it into consideration. Sometimes when we are speaking with clients or potential clients, they ask us, so how do you find or do the sourcing? And I think the sourcing is important, but it's more about selling the opportunity. And this is probably will be the most important thing in finding your partner, because this is really about partnership. This is a really long-term partnership that you are building with the company, with the agency, and you need to see that they will be the one to sell you. We spoke about employer branding, and they will be your ambassador, the first ambassador on the ground. You need to see that they are professional. You need to see that they are truly, that they want to be your partner. They want to take this, your opportunity, and to sell it to the candidate. And at the end of the day, you want to build a relationship that will stay for a long term, because once you do the US, another day you will do UK, another day you will do Germany, and you don't want to start relationship every time with a new partner. So I will really invest time in building and investigating the great partner to start it. And once you're starting, be fully committed, and you will probably, hopefully, you will see results.
All right. So going back to doing kind of good research, good background checks, understanding who to partner with, and see that they have the credentials, and hopefully make that a long-lasting relationship, and helping you in other territories, because a lot of agencies, as you all said, are global and have global footprint. I totally agree. I would say another tip for at least the Israeli audience is that if you don't have boots on the ground, already employees in certain locations, it's challenging to partner with local agencies. Understanding their culture, the communication with them. Usually you want local people to communicate with the local people, although obviously it's possible. So if you don't have, my recommendation is start local with kind of local partners. They have, you know, they have amazing experience, and they can really help you. If you do have people on the ground, then consider it could be a mix. Sometimes we AppsFlyer, where we have people on the ground, we use local agencies. Sometimes we use agencies from here, and there's advantages and disadvantages. And kind of keeping in mind that that eventually we need the expertise of external people, because the hiring is very, very different in different locations. Cool. We are out of time. We made it, and because we're out of time, I'm not going to open it for any more comments unless you have something really, really important to say. I just want to kind of try to summarize the main important things. I think the most important thing, and something that I kind of even like I'm taking for me next time we'll open a new location, is homework. And it came up a lot of times here in the conversation. Really, really good preparation will save you a lot of trouble at the end. And the preparation should be with professionals, just like Globalization partners, CQ Global, or your peers in other companies that have been there and done that. Okay, so do the homework. And again, for the Israeli audience, we have sometimes, you know, we think that we know everything and we know how to do things, but then we understand that we don't. So things are different. The world is big, and things are done differently in other places. So make sure that you do your homework properly. And that's one thing. We talked about culture differences, and they're different in every country. They have their own interesting things, okay? So we need to be aware of that culture legally. In terms of attracting the talent, we need to understand the cultural differences. And that's it. We talked about standing out. Okay, how do we increase our brand awareness? Understanding that our brand awareness is going to be different, probably lower than in our headquarters. So taking that into account and sometimes thinking creatively how to kind of stand out. And eventually we talked about agencies and who to partner with. And that's it. So first of all, I really want to thank you, the panelists, Ariel, Yotam, Karen, sorry, thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And I want to thank you, the audience, for joining and listening in. And I hope it was beneficial for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
So much for having us here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Same here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good luck, guys.